I get a lot of engagement from people of other faiths, and there's one in particular that's the most vocal, the most consistent, and that is Islam. And the video doesn't even have to be about Islam. You mention Jesus on the internet and a Muslim will find its way into your comment section. And honestly, I don't mind it. But the question that always arises is, Leonard, why are you not Muslim? And I believe that's a fair question. Now, I've studied Islam, read the Qur'an, listened to many Islamic apologists. And after all of that, I kept running into one passage in the Qur'an, one verse that I just could not get around, which is ultimately the reason why I am not Muslim. Now, to my Muslim brothers and sisters, I ask one thing, that you watch this video, you check the claims, verify the sources, and ask yourself, is there any truth to it? And to my Christian brothers and sisters, I pray that the evidence in this video strengthens your faith as you continue in your walk. But one thing is for certain, whether we're talking the Bible or the Quran or your grandma's backwood theology, we're gonna
pull up a verse. A lot of talk and a lot of word. Around here we put the scripture first. Pull up a verse.
Yeah, is it a truth, a lie? Give me the text, let the word decide.
Pull up a verse. And I don't need no fancy speech, just give me a verse the Bible teach. We just read.
So buckle up, cause we're going deep. The word alive, the message speaks.
Pull up a verse.
Okay, see, I was born a PK, that's a preacher's kid, but one thing for certain, being born into Christianity does not make it true. And I've always believed that truth should be able to withstand scrutiny. So when people ask me, Leonard, why aren't you Muslim? It typically boils down to one historical fact, one that Christians affirm and Muslims deny. And that's where our story begins. Now, before we talk about Islam, let's establish one thing. Christianity does not rise or fall on simply whether we believe in God or not. It rises and falls off of one historical event, the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus. Paul told us that if Christ had not been raised, then our preaching is useless and our faith is in vain. If Jesus was not resurrected, in order to be resurrected, you have to first die, then all of Christianity falls apart. So the question then becomes, did Jesus actually die? And more specifically, did he die by crucifixion? Now, here's why all that matters, because the Quran says in a very specific claim, they did not kill him, nor did they crucify him, but it was made to appear so. So now we have a direct conflict where Christianity says that Jesus was crucified unto death, and Islam says he was not. So let's start with first checking the historical evidence. Now, let's be clear, what are we looking for? It's not the question, is Jesus God? We're not looking at history to see, did Jesus raise from the dead? The question is much simpler. Can we look at history and determine if Jesus was indeed crucified unto death? So for a moment, I'm asking you to put your religious bias to the side and let's look at what history is teaching us. And honestly, that's the fascinating part, because even skeptical historians agree that Jesus was indeed crucified unto death. Our first source we're going to look at is Tacitus. Now, he was a Roman governor and historian. Less than 100 years after Jesus, he writes, Christ suffered the extreme penalty during the reign of Tiberius under Pontius Pilate. The extreme penalty means crucifixion, and Tacitus was not a Christian. He despised Christianity and called it a most mischievous superstition. So he is not a Christian defending Christianity. He is a hostile Roman historian who affirms that Christ was indeed crucified. Let's look at another historian, Josephus, a Jewish historian writing around the year 93 AD, references Jesus. Now, while historians do debate the exact wording of the passage, the core point is widely agreed upon. Jesus was executed under Pontius Pilate. Again, a Jewish historian, not a Christian, and references of the crucifixion are found all throughout history. The Greek satirist, and y'all know I don't know how to pronounce this, there's the name right there, mocked Christians, and he said, the Christians worship a man to this day who was crucified in Palestine. Even those mocking Christianity still come to the same conclusion. Jesus was indeed crucified. So what do we have? Multiple sources, early sources, hostile sources, neutral sources, all alike, all coming to the same conclusion. Jesus was crucified. Now, here's something that most people miss when doing the historical evidence. It's not just that ancient sources say that Jesus was crucified. It's that no known ancient sources from the time of Jesus argue that he actually escaped crucifixion. Think about that. We have Roman sources, Jewish sources, Christian sources, some friendly, some hostile. None of them from the time of Jesus say actually he was not crucified unto death. and even skeptical sources acknowledge this. Bart Ehrman, an atheist New Testament scholar, said, "The crucifixion of Jesus by the hands of the Romans is one of the most secure facts that we have about his life." So when you take a step back and look at history, it's nearly 2,000 years of evidence pointing towards Jesus was indeed crucified. Now here's the issue. Let's pull up the verse. "They did not kill him, nor did they crucify him, but it was made to appear so." Going over that passage again and again, I realized something. Let's grant Islam the argument for a moment. Though the historical records indicate that Jesus was crucified, let's for a moment say he indeed was not, just as the Qur'an says. If the crucifixion of Jesus Christ did not happen, every eyewitness, every Christian, the Jewish historian, the Roman historian were all deceived. Notice, I did not say they were mistaken. They were deceived because the Quran says that it was made to appear so, meaning Allah made it look like Jesus was crucified, which means the strongest evidence for Christianity, the backbone of Christianity itself, was created by Allah himself. Think about it. For 600 years, Allah allows Christianity to spread. He allows martyrs to be so convinced that they choose death. He allows churches to be planted and the Roman Empire to convert, the most influential empire at the time. All based on what? A divine illusion? If that's true, then Allah is the greatest supporter of Christianity ever, because he left the world with overwhelming evidence that Jesus was crucified, and people simply followed the evidence. You cannot blame them. Eyewitnesses followed what they saw, others followed the evidence and testimonies of eyewitnesses. So if the crucifixion did not happen, but Allah made it appear so, Allah misled countless people for centuries until the Quran came to correct this mistake. And that creates a massive theological problem, because now God is not the author of clarity. He indeed becomes the author of confusion. Now, here's where the problem will get even deeper, because Muslims will tell us, I believe in the prophets too. They will say, I believe in Moses, David, Isaiah, Zechariah, the Old Testament prophets, and even the Quran calls Jesus a prophet and the Messiah. But here's the issue. The very prophets they claim to respect prophesied that the Messiah would suffer and die. So the question becomes, how can you say you respect and believe in the prophets while actively denying what they taught? Because if Jesus is the Messiah, then we have to ask, what did the prophets say the Messiah would do? Isaiah writes about the coming Messiah in chapter 53. He says that he will be pierced for our transgressions and crushed for our iniquities. But then he goes on to say that he was cut off from the land of the living. That means death. Now, this is Isaiah. This isn't some Roman historian. This was one of God's prophets prophesying hundreds of years before Jesus would be born that the Messiah would experience death. Now, I already know the default response is, well, the Bible's been corrupted. And we will save that conversation for another video. But even if that is your conclusion, then you have to answer this question. Where do you draw the line? Because as a Muslim, you have to accept things that come from the Bible. Case in point, a Muslim has to believe that Jesus knelt down when he prayed. However, that's found in the Bible. It's not written anywhere in the Quran. A Muslim would believe that Jesus lived in first century Israel. Again, written in the Bible, not written in the Quran. Jesus spoke Aramaic and was born in Bethlehem. All Muslims would agree. But again, this information comes strictly from the Bible and is not written in the Quran anywhere. So you have to ask yourself, why do I trust biblical records about Jesus when it comes to things I agree with, but reject it when those same writings say the Messiah would suffer, be pierced, be rejected, and die? If one prophet said it, maybe we could dismiss it. If one verse said it, maybe we can argue corruption. But this was the message of the prophets. Isaiah was not alone. In Psalms 22:16, David writes about the Messiah and he says, they pierced my hands and feet. Now think about that. David wrote about the crucifixion centuries before Israel would be introduced to what crucifixion even was. The prophet Zechariah says in Zechariah 12:10, they look on me, the one they have pierced, and mourn for him. Pierced, mourn, rejected, cut off from life. The prophets paint the same picture over and over again, a suffering Messiah. Even Jesus himself says this. Luke 24:16, was it not necessary that the Messiah should suffer these things and then enter into his glory? So here's the tension that Islam creates. It claims Jesus is the Messiah, but deny the very things that the prophets said the Messiah would do. So if the crucifixion never happened, either the prophets were false, or scripture has been so corrupted that we cannot trust any of their message, or Jesus was not the Messiah they were talking about. But you cannot affirm both. You cannot say Jesus is the Messiah and the Messiah was never crucified unto death. So history attests to the crucifixion. The prophets point to the crucifixion. And the only defense that Islam gives is that Allah deceived people for centuries with overwhelming evidence because it was his will to do so. Listen, it all comes down to this. Option number one, Jesus was crucified, Christianity stands, and Islam is false. Or option two, Jesus was not crucified. Allah deceived the world because it was made to appear so. And I cannot reconcile that with a God who reveals truth. Let's wrap this thing up. I did not stay a Christian because I was born into it. I stayed a Christian because I followed the evidence. The crucifixion is not just a belief, but it is a historical fact. And if the crucifixion was indeed true, the next question becomes, well, was the resurrection? And if the resurrection is true, then Jesus is not just a prophet. He is Lord. And that is why, with honesty, with history, and with conviction, I cannot be a Muslim. Because that one passage forces me to choose between all of history and the message of the prophets, or something that came nearly 600 years later. And me, I'm going with the evidence. And if you disagree, well, let's talk. Let's pull up a verse. And if you made it this far, please like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.